Welcome to everyone. Welcome to our first encounter for the event, the Day of the Analyst. We ask you to put your cell phones on silent mode so that this will not affect the event. We also ask you not to use your cell phones, and Wi-Fi will not be available in the room, unfortunately. We also have international guests online. This is our first encounter, and there will be many more to come that will allow us to learn about the company and as well as the energy sector in Colombia. The purpose is for you to better your market knowledge regarding the business, and which will make your management efforts more effective, and at the same time will bring you closer to our company. We are pleased to present Dr. Juan Fernando Vasquez, Chief Financial Officer of Isagen, who will give us some welcoming remarks. Welcome, everyone. I see some familiar faces. I'm glad to see them. I see that they're faithful to our events. This day continues to be very special because generally it's a day where we have a better relationship with our stakeholders, and we start building relationship links that allows us to facilitate your job and at the same time achieve that objective that we have, that goal to have greater visibility in the capital markets. And today we have a very select group. We have representatives from stock market firms and pension funds and the main investment funds, which are actually stockholders of the company. We are going to have live broadcasting as well as international and national streaming. We have chosen these topics which we think are very current and very important, and the ones that you have been asking throughout the most during these past couple of months. Some of the topics, you might have some questions later on about topics you might also be interested, and you can ask them later on, and you can also ask different questions which we'll try to resolve. We've also brought a select group of people from the company which are experts in specific topics, and we hope they will give you great information. I welcome you all. I wish you a Merry Christmas. And I commence the speeches. The topics which we have selected for the analysis were chosen due to the previously identified needs. We also invite you to tell us what other topics you may be interested in, so we can cater to them during our next events. The conference you will be hearing will also be broadcast live on our website, as was said just recently. That will be broadcast live through our website so that other assistants and national and international assistants may come. We ask you to hold your questions until the panelist sessions, which will be held after the conferences, and we'll have an appropriate moderator to cater to them, which will be Ricardo Lozano. The questions we will answer the questions in the following manner. First, we will answer the questions coming from our live audience, and immediately after, we will answer those questions coming to us live via our online chat system. We now invite Javier Alonso Sandoval, Professional of Investigation and Development from the management, which will present the growth strategy and the purpose, the higher purpose of Isagen. We welcome Javier. Good morning. How are you? Welcome. My name, as all you have heard, is Javier Mendez. I am part of the administrative team and the investigation team, which is a bit where we started. In this administration, we have two visions, which is to study the projects which we will develop in the future, do all the pertinent studies, and adopt all new technologies. But this doesn't just pop up out of thin air. It comes from an analysis which are done in other areas of the company, and other administrative areas like the localization areas and the production part, so that we can have these growth strategies surface. We want to have a brief about the principles of these strategies of growth and our superior purpose, higher purpose. How does this growth entail? the objective of that growth strategy, the fountains of energy and technology that are available, the matrix for the development of Isagen's projects in the short and long term and medium term, and to see how the growth is in the short term. A bit about the projects we are seeing in the portfolio of projects of hydroelectric portfolio and renewable sources and non-conventional sources, and our management efforts. The beginning of this growth strategy and the company are based on that the company has to be profitable and it has to create value, economic value, but not just at any cost. Additionally, it's clear that the company needs to also help the social welfare and also protect the environment with a social company purpose. That's the fundamental that should move any company in the world, because the goal of their day-to-day work is society. That's who we're really working for. So it's clear that the company has this purpose and these principles uh, in their purposes, ingrained in their purposes. Our higher purpose of the company, which has been defined recently, is that Isagen generates intelligent energy and prosperity for society. It's to say that we generate efficient energy, which contributes to the mitigation of climate change, maintaining competitiveness in our company as well. In the industry, we use networks that are cooperating and coherent practices with the human development and generating value with our interest groups, for our interest groups as well. That is a higher purpose that Isagen has, which is part of social responsibility for the company. We cannot grow just at any cost. I again say that this higher purpose takes us that our strategy for growth should have some energy sources defined which it needs to use to grow, and those sources of growth are energy sources that are renewable, and management of hydro area. Water is something that's important for all of society and important to all of us as well, and we have to have a rational use of it and an adequate use of the fountains of water and the projects that we're going to build. This is very important. I want to highlight that Isagen has around 10,000 acres and near its water and that are being conserved. These are protected areas that Isagen is actually helping to protect these areas, and we're going to increase these protection areas, these natural reservation areas, when our new Sogamoso plant comes into effect. Also, our growth should take us to develop projects with very low carbon trails that actually emit less greenhouse emission gases, and all of this should take us to a better sustainable energy management so that the company could maintain and ensure its growth and the resources it needs for the future, being an element that's important within society as well. The objective of this growth strategy is to develop projects that cater to the future demands of for energy in Colombia, and also grow the company. Further on, our other speakers will also say that logically there's an increase in demand of energy, and Isagen has to be prepared to meet the growing energy demand. What are the sources of energy and the technologies which Isagen is using to grow. Here it's important to note, I understand that you guys are working in financial areas and marketing areas where this is not really too relevant or too clear for you. But the strategy for growth is based on using natural resources that are renewable. All those resources that can be renewed at the same rate as they are consumed, like such as the sun, heat, biomass, forests, oil production, water waterfalls, wind energy, and underground thermal energy creation. The origin of this comes from, like on the first part here that I'm pointing at, is the sun. The sun causes the water to evaporate, go up to the mountains, and then come down as a river. And it'll help plants do photosynthesis and have biomass. So we can all say that the sun has a big contributor. We can say everything is renewable, but in reality, no, because the sun is actually it's not renewable, but it'll take 5 billion years in order to stop. So we still consider it renewable. So we'll see what we can do in 5 billion years. But for now, we just say that it's renewable. And our day-to-day, for us, it's a natural renewable resource for our purposes. And with these fountains of energy, sources of energy, we have to develop non-conventional energy generation sources. We call those non-conventional because man is not using them currently to develop energy, but in nature they've been using it. Nature has been using it for a long time, such as solar energy, wind energy, biomass. And we are using some non-conventional energy sources that we are investigating, such as carbon gasification and the Mario trees. So in this sense, Isagen will generate energy which is cleaner, hopefully from renewable resources and non-conventional sources. That means that our strategy of growth is based on the hydroelectric principle mainly. And this is very important because perhaps wind energy, solar energy, and biomass and geothermal energy are very nice because they're good for the environment. They don't have greenhouse gases. But we have to keep in mind that these are limited sources and that they cannot give us the amount of energy that the country actually needs. So these are actually complementary energy sources. They complement hydroelectric energy. They don't really replace it. And sometimes they help meet the deficits that hydroelectric energy has. So it's important to keep that in mind. So we have to have a varied portfolio of energy sources to use. We also have wind energy projects and geothermal energy and carbon gasification. This is our portfolio. But reality is our purpose, higher purpose says, we will generate intelligent energy. That intelligent energy is that which uses in a preferential manner renewable energy sources, greener technologies, more efficient technologies, which are more sustainable and they will contribute to the reduction of greenhouse effect. This is our matrix of development for the project. We have to see here that we have defined that the technology or hydroelectric technology for the big hydroelectric plants is something that we are going to use at the short, long, and medium term. The hydro PCH or the small hydroelectric plants are under 10 megabytes. We're going to develop those in the medium and long term. The wind energy, we're going to develop it in the short, medium, and long term. And for that, I'll tell you a little bit about our strategy later on. Our solar energy, we think that it's a type of energy that is still conditioned a bit because of its high cost. It's very costly. Geothermal energy is a fountain a source of energy which we're developing in a medium, long, and short term. Carbon, it's conditioned a bit. We do have a lot of water. Why do we need to use carbon? We have wind energy, which are cleaner. They contaminate less, and therefore that's why we only use carbon in case of we have some very highly efficient technologies which don't emit greenhouse or emit minimum greenhouse gases, and we are investigating gasification of carbon, and that's why we're investigating gasification of carbon. Gas we're using in medium, short, and long-term. Liquid we're using. We have the idea of maybe not using this anymore but this is not a for sure thing because the conditions of the market may change. But there is an intention to not use liquid biofuels. We're going to use if it's available. Only it's regarding its availability. In the short term, what has happened to Isagen? In 2012, Isagen had 5 central energy generators: San Carlos, Aguas, Thermal Center, Calderas, and Miel. And now in 2013, in the first semester of 2013, we have another central, which is in the River Amaya in Tolima. And in 2013, we have 6 central energy generation plants with 2.2 million megabytes and an annual generation of 10,500 gigawatts per year. We see in the short term that by 2014 we should have 7 plants and a capacity of 3,032 megabytes because of the incorporation of the Sogamosa plant, which is programmed for the month of September or the second semester of September of 2014. And the company will be in the capacity to generate 16,000 gigabytes. That means a growth of around 60% in the generation of energy. Regarding the projects that we have in our portfolio, Isagen has a great portfolio of projects, and they're going to continue to develop new projects, and they will, as the demand comes into effect. Like for example, the Sogamoso plant. This happened. This one, Sogamoso will be in 2014. Amaya in 2013. Puerto Piedrasol and Cafaslo are being tested right now, and we're trying to get the licenses, the environmental licenses for these. We're talking about 100,000 megabytes here, but we haven't decided on the date to start building these. But we're ready to start or to initiate their development as soon as it's required. We have a portfolio of projects, hydroelectric projects which we're testing. It could be about 5,000 megabytes which we're developing and which are in different phases of studies. They may be in the pre-study phase, and some are in the study phase. There's also an evaluation of another interests evaluations that we're doing, and there's an identification of small hydroelectric plants which we're studying and we're building at the moment. Regarding renewables resources and non-conventional resources, we have Parque Eólico Guajira. It's a park which we are creating in partnership with another company. It's a 32 megabyte park. It has a license, environmental license. It has a community protocol, and it has been designed, and it's soon or very close to being built. We have a study which is called the Wind Potential Study. This is about 5 or 6 wind energy projects which we're studying simultaneously. And we're trying to see the potential here. We started in 2008, and we have several towers of measurement, and we're measuring. These are projects which are in the pre-study phase and surely will go into development in the future. We have the geothermic project in the volcano of Del Ruiz. It's a project which is, we think it's going to be a minimum 50 megabytes, depending on the vapor which we find in this volcano. And we hope we're in the study phase. and the environmental licensing. This project may be available soon. The National Geothermic Project, which is on the border between Ecuador and Colombia, and the volcanoes Cerro Negro. It's a project which is a joint effort between Ecuador and Colombia, because the geothermic area is underneath these three volcanoes, and the border is just in the middle of these volcanoes. So the resources may be on one side or the other, so it's a shared resource. That's why we're developing a joint effort with Ecuador. We have these geothermic projects is in the study phases. We also have a project of carbon gasification using high pressure. In colloquial terms, it's to take carbon, add pressure and heat to it, break all the molecular structure of the carbon, and when the structure is broken, molecular structure is broken, we recombine the molecules and atoms with water vapor and air, and they produce a synthesis gas, which is a clean gas, which can be used to generate energy in a turbine in a combined cycle, and it's called and it can be very efficient. It can reach about 60% efficiency, and the gas can be transported through tubes. At this moment, we have a reactor from the lab that's actually working. And we hope in the short term to be able to go to a pilot plant. And we have investigation and producing biodiesel, which we're investigating the production of biodiesel due to two different types of crops, American crops. There's two different species that produce a lot of oil that nobody really knows about them. They're not too common, and we're actually in the process of investigating these. We've already obtained some very high quality biodiesel from this oil, and we're in the domestication phase and field tests for these two different species. This, in general terms, is the strategy for growth of the company. But it's also important to note that we have something which is called climate management. This is important because what we're looking for here is to be coherent with our higher purpose to generate cleaner energy, more efficient energy that contributes to the welfare and reducing climate change, greenhouse. This is something which is inherent to the social responsibility factor of the company. It also responds to world politics and national politics as well for the reduction of the greenhouse effect. These goals, the goals of these objectives is to reduce carbon trails and for the company, trying to reduce greenhouse effects for the company, contribute to the mitigation or lessening of climate change, and adapting ourselves to climate change. Climate change is a reality. If it's varying at the moment, if the climate is actually changing, we have to take the pertinent actions, and this could have different actions related to. One is to diversify our energy sources, and another is to reduce greenhouse emissions. The results from this is that we already have the measurements. We already have the methodology and the protocol in order to measure carbon trails for the company. At this moment, we have carbon trail measurements from the year 2008, 9, 10, and 12, and we take these measurements every year. At any moment, we can just say, we can tell you exactly how much carbon we are emitting in that specific year. The idea is to reduce our carbon trail for the company through the structurization of a program of reducing carbon trails and compensating or reducing the emissions through alternative energy sources or through establishment of areas of compensation and waterways, and to be coherent with the intelligent energy generation strategy. And that was it. Thank you very much. We receive Marta Cecilia Vélez, and now Director of Business Development, and John Freddy Mejia, management from the commercialization sector, which will explain how the gas market behaves in Colombia and regulation is for gas in Colombia as well. Good morning. I'm going to show you the regulation for energy and gas and the market of gas. Let's wait for them to put the slides up. Okay, the first thing we're going to see is the current regulations for energy, and then for the regulations for natural gas. Okay, so what happened in 2013 in energy basically was that the CREC set a decree where they said that there was a need to reconfigure 2013-2004 possibilities, and we had to make an auction for these years. We had to auction these years because since demand hasn't grown more than was expected, we don't need new projects at the medium term. The resolution CREG 2013 establishes mechanism for the expansion of and gives us new options to develop the distribution for new operators. Resolution 42 and 43 for 2013 are just proposals. CREG has new proposals for energy, which will to determine methodology of transmissions and distribution. This is all subject to discussion. And Resolution CREG 082 of 2013, that the proposal of rules for the market and the risk for risk and supplying of energy. Resolution 313 it should come out next year. What it's going to establish is a mechanism of auctions for energy, so that many people can participate anonymously, and we can sell energy through an auction. So the generators we participate, and the demand is purchased on the regulated market. For the non-regulated markets, it's optional to participate. It has to do with the demands of energy in the country. It's not flat. The product has monthly obligation, and there's a secondary market. And C consolidates the demand for the next years with the estimates for the commercializers for next year. And we define the important scheme of guarantees. This is very important for the sales because it's going to be anonymous. We're not going to know who we're selling to, so we have guarantees for participation, permanence, and the period of commitment. And the price of the product will be the price that the auction has. We think that the first auction will happen in the second quarter of next year. Now I leave you with the market of gases. Good morning. I'm going to present the principal changes that have happened in the market of gas. We're going to see the institutional part, structure, operation, the main norms, the perspectives of natural gas. We're going to speak a bit about the Decree 2100 that happened in 2011, which has to do with these regulatory changes. And specifically, we're going to talk about the main changes in the Law CREG 089 of 2013 and the results in the process of commercialization that happened in 2013. And the institutional part of the gas, they have introduced several changes. The main change has to do with the institutional area and the council. The Council of National Gas Operations is going to have a more protagonistic role, which will counsel the government and the governmental agencies. In regards to operation, there's a committee regarding maintenance, which will allow us to give a more optimal management for the gas methodologies that we will use in the future. And in other words, the incorporation of new regulations market regulations. This is going to manage the electronic newsletter that is going to be required for the development of the market. And we will also have what the platforms are in order to have an auction for the primary market and the use it, sell it market as well, which will help there be more availability to buy gas. Basically, the chain, and there's three steps. The main characteristic is a competition. The price is here, and the principal, which are in the Guajira, that are free. And as these are regulated by 083 law. And the topic of transportation, it's a natural monopoly. There are some characteristics of free access to the network, and these are generated. And here there's a monopoly, and there's also free access. And there's regulated positions, which are under revision. And finally, the secondary market, which is a market where they buy and sell, which is regulated by the transportation regulation. And they're establishing some new decrees in 089, which I'll explain later on. Basically here, this is what we see finally as users reflected in our gas bill. We have a bill of cost of production, the production and commercialization are charges which are in competition. The rest of the charges are regulated by the commission. What are the main norms that are guiding the market? The first, as I said, is Decree 2100, which establishes the mechanisms to promote and ensure the supply for natural gas. Resolution Craig 126 of 2010 and Craig 079 of 2011 establishes the general criteria where people service the transportation of natural gas. Resolution 062 establishes a regulation for natural gas that's imported in the Atlantic coast of Colombia. This is a new resolution which will allow there will be a new development plant in the Colombian Atlantic coast, which should be available by 2016. Another important resolution is Craig 088, which Craig liberated the price in the Guajira. Today, most fields in the country are free. This brought many benefits, which we will see a bit later on, and the topic of prices. The other is Craig 089, which is for commercializing gas, which started being applied this year, and for 2014. It defines the rules for the primary and secondary markets, use it, sell it, and the management of the market. Resolution 124, which establishes the rules for managing the market of natural gas for this market, which will allow you to organize everything with the gas market much more efficiently. And finally, Resolution 150, which opens the process of selection for gas management and establishes the rules and the process, or how this process is going to be handled. Basically, all of these changes will be supported in this policy, energy policy, the energy policy of Decree 2100 of 2011. Basically, this decree, we establish an obligation to declare their production for 10 years. This allows us to give the demands so they can move where they should set their expectations of supplying. Basically, what they have to do is they have to declare the total production for sales, which is a production that goes from the projected production minus the committed production minus the government or state production, or that means royalties. That's what they declare, and what is subject to sales and the process of commercialization. The other speaks about minor fields, which are fields that don't produce more than 30 million feet per day and can be commercialized freely in any moment. Essential demand say that these sectors have to have a contract in any specific moment. Who are they? Residential users, natural gas for vehicles, compression for the national transportation systems, and refinery. That always has to have contracts and it has a priority. The other element in the policy is the freedom to export this gas, where they are free to set the prices, to build and operate infrastructure, to have access to the infrastructure, and to import and export gas. And we limit exports when the internal supply is at risk. This is not a we need sometimes we need to import gas to cater to the public services, and there's also free access in the international markets. And there's a new concept regarding that. There's a lot of there's the expectation, which is the non-conventional gas, which is a gas that has some characteristics which are very. It's not produced in the way that national gas is produced today in Colombia, and the idea is that this gas will have free commercialization aspects as well. And basically it will be gas shale that we're talking about, and those which are associated to carbon layers. Very well. So talking about Craig 089, and they define the processes that are related to the negotiations of natural gas used as fuel, and they established this according to the criteria which were in 2100 and from the ministry. It regulated the following aspects: the commercialization of gas in the primary markets. The primary markets is that of producers and agents. They directly. The order and the secondary markets, and the secondary market is a surplus market, where they put their surplus in the markets so that others can acquire it in commercial auctions. And other ones in the industry contracts, and the profits from the management of the markets, such as administrator, and some aspects that are commercial. And basically, what is the gas management? It's an agent which will have a design of the electronic newsletter or electronic information system, where all of the producers will have to place all their information online so that it will be available for the markets. The other is to centralize that information and to work with the auctions in the primary market and in the secondary market, and generate profits reports. Regarding the transactions and the participants in the primary markets, we have defined that if the offer is less than the demand, then they will have an auction. In the opposite case, we will have a direct negotiation. We established that non-conventional gas and OCGs for exportation, options for buying gas, OCGs are options for buying gas, they will be done through direct negotiations. The other elements, the interruptible gas, will be commercialized in the auction format. Regarding the secondary market, there's two mechanisms for commercializing this: the direct negotiation, or the use it, sell it auctions for transportation, and short term for transportation. This basically is if you had a spot market in order to sell for the long term the transportation which is not being used by some, and which does not have expectations for being used either. And in the short term, the gas which is not used for the next day, the market will have it available. It will put it available for the market so that it can be bought through the platform which he designs in the electronic auction, so that they can see their economic activities. And the supply and demand offer will be available always in the electronic newsletter. And regarding the primary markets, we have the sellers. Who are these sellers? The producers, commercializers of gas, natural gas that's imported, and the transport department, and the non-regulated users and commercializers. Regarding the secondary market, the sellers will be the users that are not regulated, that have surpluses that are available, and commercializers. Buyers will be commercializers. Well, buyers will be, commercializers for natural gas. As you can see in the secondary market, you will only sell the surpluses, which will come from non-regulated users and commercializers that may have some surpluses. That's an element that's fundamental. The main contracts. These are the contracts which are going to be had in this market. The first is the firm market that guarantees a capacity at any moment. The contract with condition to firm is interrupted in case there's a shortage. Only in that condition will they interrupt the contract if there's a shortage. The other is the option to buy gas, which is a contract that guarantees firmness when there's a certain condition in the electrical market. The OCG with transportation also works in the same way under a critical condition. If there's a critical condition, they'd only interrupt exportation, and we have to give this to the generator in case of an emergency. The other way is the contract with no interruptions, where they don't guarantee certain amounts of firmness, and it can be suspended at any moment in a bilateral fashion, be it by the producer or the remittent. And transportation, the same schematics, the same scenes, same contracts, but from the point of view of capacity, except for the exports one. I want to clear up that these contracts, the ones about options to buy and firmness ones, are two different contract forms that are used by thermic generators to guarantee their energy. That's why it's conditioned to the shortage conditions in the electrical markets. Another one of the elements which were introduced in 089 is that they're going to standardize some contracts. They're going to use strange cases and cases that are exempt. It's not what the producer says any longer, or the remittent, but what is established under the regulations. They shorten and all the contracts need to be registered before the market. And the primary markets, the commercialization will be done for each field with firm contracts and then options to buy. The deadlines for these contracts are 5 years or more. The lots or the quantities will be from 1 MBTU, and the prices will be updated by the primary market itself, the index. For the secondary market, they're going to standardize the contracts. They're weekly, monthly, or semester contracts, or annual contracts, and they standardize the points of delivery where they're going to have that contract, which will be Barranca Bermeja, Enlace, and Well, here basically, what we want to show here is how the scheme is of use it, sell it. Basically, the gas which is not nominated by the remittance for the next day, the manager of the market takes it and puts it in an information system, and the demand comes in and looks in the system, and they have an auction in order to sell this daily. That's where they establish. You can find gas in that market, which will provide much more liquidity for the market itself, and they use it, sell it for the long term. As the transportation, which is not. I'm going to show you how the. In that zone, and the. What is at 5 years, which is about 250,000 square feet. This demand here was a thermic demand, which was contracted by the scheme. The prices, let's say, are the most evident results, which have been highlighted here. The firm price for firm gas in the coast. Let's talk about the coast now. It's $4.25, and the regular price was 5.67 cents. We're talking about a reduction in 65% in the reduction of gas in the price of gas in the coast. And in the interior of the country, we had prices of 2.60 in firm contracts, this is a 35% reduction in the price of gas in the interior. And basically, the positive aspects, there's greater liquidity and the secondary markets. They standardize contracts. They limit the sales of contracts with interruptions in the primary market and the capacity that's available for commercializers. And they organize the secondary market. They create auctions that are daily use it, sell it auctions. There's an unincentive because contracts are now that are 100%. We're talking about 100% of their capacity. The ones that now it's going to be in this new scheme, they're going to be 100%. There's not a way to manage them with less than 100%. The other would be used through auctions, and it would generate new costs that are transaction costs because this is going to generate some additional costs for the demand, and intermediary costs are also going to increase costs a bit. We're going to have commercialization modifications because there's going to be an area that has to be working on the spot market, and it's going to have a positive impact on the demand when we're talking about those variations of demand in the day-to-day, and we require a period of transition for this rule. I believe that's what we had. Now we invite you to enjoy a delicious cup of coffee. We have a 15-minute break. And also those of you who are connected via live broadcasting. Please come back in 15 minutes. Do not turn off your broadcasting, please. We now have Dr. Carlos Mario Restrepo Sanchez, Director of Engineering from the Energy Production Administration, who will speak about the climate and the hydrology in the country that affects the generation for our company. Welcome to everyone. For me, it's a true pleasure, an honor, and a challenge to talk about a topic which I know is in everybody's mouth at the moment permanently, and that in one way or another has a very strong incidence on our business, the business of generation. But as we're going to see in these slides, it's really not too easy. And believe me, it's a bit complex. The objective is to let you guys know about the topic about the hydrological variables which have an effect on Isagen. It's very important to emphasize that the climate itself, all of us that are in the business, the energy business, are subject to the climate. And we cannot do anything about it, as we have seen, and I hope you guys to know that from Isagen's point of view, we're trying to understand it very well, and in that way take advantage of the resources to the best of the advantage. Well, the agenda we highlight today, we're going to speak a bit about hydrological products, understanding that hydrological are like on the interior of Isagen, and coordinating with other areas of the company, and in the administration of commercialization. John Freddy and Marta told us about the regulatory gas. We also have some products, as we call them, in which we give them so that commercialization may do their job. We're going to talk about atmospheric phenomena, and environmental phenomena is a bit complex, but we'll try to speak to it, make it as simple as possible. We'll speak about the forecast, the hydrological forecast, and we will tell you about where we're at today, looking at the future, but where we're at today with the variables from the environment and that Isagen is trying to work towards the near future. We want to present 4 products, hydrological products. Obviously, there's many more, but we think it's very important that you guys understand these elements. And it's that Isagen, and specifically the team of engineering, which I am proud to direct. We are part of the hydrological subcommittee and of hydrological plants. That's where all the electrical sectors, and I'm not the Joanna, the specialist over there. You'll meet her a little bit later. We have a presence in this subcommittee, and what we do here is to try with all of our agents to see how we're supposed to treat the energy sector in the future. And we give them this product, which is a forecast, which has a horizon of 13 months, which each of the agents has to show what their best estimation would be, what would be the behavior, hydrological behavior during that period of time, in such a way where we can plan ahead in a structured fashion and more organized. We give them equally to the management. We give them a forecast with a monthly forecast, but with a horizon of 13 months as well. Monthly, we are actually updating our 13-month forecast. So we see how are we doing this month, and how do we expect to behave during the next 13 months in affluence, in our waterways, in our reserves, and we see what the square meters we have. What we should have in our plants during these next few months, and then we also estimate what would possibly be the percentage, taking into account our historical averages, how the behavior should look, so that the commercialization department can actually do an optimal planning and use their resources to the best of their abilities. We are always analyzing the hydrological behavior of our waterways, water sources, and we have a product which is a forecast with a daily resolution, that's 2-day forecast, which the commercialization and they can use it to offer their services on the stock market. And we can tell them how our energy production is going to be for tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. and they can use that to also plan in their short term. Let's speak a bit about the atmospheric or environmental phenomenon. When we speak with a lot of you and with the public, those of you who know a bit about hydrology, normally the main topic that they always tell you about is the phenomenon of the Niño and the Niña. And the most advanced case, the one who's already done a master's in the course, does not know that the temperature of the ocean is too hot or too cold. The ocean water. The bad news is that's just a small portion of the news of the 12 to 14 combinations or phenomenons that exist that our experts, as Joanna will tell you, have to be looking at constantly. These are phenomenons that are very complex and they are associated to the physical variables which we all know about from school: pressure, temperature, sea level, gradients of and temperature, etc. And we also combine that with geographical accidents like mountains, valleys, etc., etc. We want to speak a bit, or concentrate a bit about on these that are highlighted here. ZCIT is, this is not a tongue twister here, but it's just hard to say that this is the intertropical convergence zone. We're also going to talk about the phenomenon ENSO, which is associated with the Nino effect, and a phenomenon that has many incidents, which are the oscillations of Madden and Julian. As I said before, those which we're not going to talk about do have a direct incidence on the environment or in the climate. We have the north. I'm sorry about using so many acronyms, but there's no other way to use them. Surface temperature conditions in the ocean here at TSM, and the topic of hurricanes and waves from the east and the Amazons. And this one is always part of the exam, which is one of the one of the interaction of the atmosphere and the Earth, the oscillation of the quasi-binal, and the part of the Choco and the Pacific as well. There's about 13, 14 atmospheric phenomena that we have to continually look at, and nobody really has a crystal ball to see what's going to happen. So we have to make our best judgment and forecast in order to give our products. Let's talk about the intertropical convergence zone. This is Colombia here. This is Central America, and obviously this is South America. Colombia has a position that's privileged in the globe. It's on the globe, which is right on the equator, on the tropic, where the sun hits the highest, and obviously the inclination that the Earth has. We have a lot of influence from the sun here, and that warming that surrounds that belt that surrounds the Earth. What it does is that it creates some waves or some winds. That what they do is that they push constantly the clouds and the wind thermal ocean currents from the Chocó to the coast of Asia as well. Asia apparently is very far away, but it's really close to us because of the way the Earth works, and it has a lot to do with our climate as well. So what this has is this creates a natural flow. And this is a more deep topic. Okay, the difference of pressure where the wind is moving. But keep in mind and learn the word. These winds have their incidence. It's very, very important on the phenomenon, the Niño and the Niña. So this convergence, intertropical convergence zones creates, and specifically hits Colombia, and it creates some waves that move through because of some thermic gradients, and it creates what Colombia. Well, in Colombia we don't really have seasons, but we do have a winter and a summer season, or let's say rainy season and dry season, in other words. So the red zone here, of course, talks about some gradients that are higher temperatures, and the blue would be the lower temperatures. And so we have a lot of rain, and during the period of January, February, and December and March. And a summer, which is called in the month of June and July, and the rest is it's winter, let's say properly as they say it in Colombia. Let's speak a bit about EMSO, which is also within the master's program, which I was telling you about, in the public which is interested in this topic. Here I'm going to appeal to your imagination. Here we see America, and let's say that Asia is on this side. So in reality, what we're trying to explain when we have these under normal conditions, and I'm talking about the previous slide, remember the famous winds I just spoke about? These winds come from, and they push from this sector, from America towards Asia. They push the sea currents underneath the oceans as well, and they send it from the Pacific until they reach the coast of Asia. What happens here? The superficial area of the ocean, some people speak about 300 meters around, they start getting warm, and when it hits the coast of Asia, the level of the sea increases about 40 centimeters on that coast. Since the ocean is hot, then there's evaporation that occurs here, and how they explained to us when we were in elementary school back in our geography classes, because back in our old classes, they create clouds, and there's a lot of rain that comes in Asia because of this. So just say that we have a rainy zone in Asia, and on this side we have a dry zone. That's like the under normal conditions, what would happen. The simple explanation that I can give you related to the Niño and the Niña effect is that really what happens is that the winds that under these normal conditions were very strong, they were able to push these clouds and those sea currents because of a reason that I don't even know, and I don't even think many experts know. Those winds, they reduce their strength, so they can't push the currents. So the flow is interrupted. So what happened before in Asia is now happening in America. So now, especially that Colombia, well, let's remember that Colombia is about 1.2 million square kilometers, and from the zone from Ecuador and to the bottom we have the Niño. So the Niño in Peru and Ecuador, there's a lot of rain, but in Colombia we are quote unquote dry season. So here we see that zone of that rainy zone in this area, and when the Niña comes, that's the inverse happens. So the conditions of rain come towards the principal zone of Asia. So this is dependent on some ocean atmospheric conditions as well. We're talking about the Walker's cell, and that increases or diminishes its area in relationship to the Pacific, and creates a zone of transit of clouds, which either favor the appearing of clouds in Asia or in America, or maybe in the central part of the Pacific. That's the phenomenon of the Niño. Investigators, the thousands of investigators that are working on this, and that of course every day are trying to understand it more and more, have gotten together and divided the Pacific zone in several different Niño zones. So here we have Niño zone 1 plus 2, where here is Colombia, and then we have region 3 of Niño, and there's a Niño 4, and there's a transition 3-4 zone as well. According to different investigations, the Niño region that has the most incidence on Colombia, has the most impact on Colombia, are what is known as Niño 3 and 4. Why 3 and 4 and not 1 and 2? I don't know. Don't ask me, but that's what they have found. What they have shown is that what happens in this region here in 3 and 4 related to the temperature of the ocean, of convection, of cooling, etc. Everything that happens in this zone here is reflected here in Colombia. Be it for rainy conditions or for dry conditions. Some of the most important phenomena that are regulated, and then for the Niño topic of the oscillation of the sur, we're going to watch them one by one. The the SOI, the South Oscillation Index, SOI. That's Then here comes the Walker cell again until it comes into effect. But what we do now is monitor the difference between the atmospheric pressure between the Tahiti from France and the Galapagos Islands and the Bali area in Colombia. So it's a bit complex here. So what they're doing is monitoring according to this index. We'll see what the variables are that regulate this index. We're verifying constantly what the behavior of these currents are. Where are they presenting? Where they have high temperatures? Where they have low temperatures? And they manage this through some indexes, the SOI index. And finally, what the investigators do is they relate these indexes to what's happening in reality. And what they're trying to do is make this quantify this natural topic, to tabulate it, and that way they can make some more accurate predictions. The ONI index, which is the Oscillation North Index, has to do a lot with anomalies from the superficial sea temperatures. When we talk about the anomalies, or what comes to mind is, I told you before that they are monitoring the temperatures constantly in the up to 300 meters in the surface, and investigators have found that when those temperatures oscillate between, or they increase above 0.5 and under 0.5, let's say that's the range which they're working with, 0.5. They establish some correlations that when we have temperatures which up to 0.05 degrees, there's a probability of the Nino effect and there's a heating occurrence. But when it's up to minus 0.5, then the phenomenon of the Nina could happen. And when it's zero, or in the mid zone, when it's behaving how it's supposed to be behaving historically, then we have neutral conditions. There's something important to note here. You see here a bunch of numbers. Don't worry, I'm not going to read them by one. What we show you is the follow-up that they're doing according to that indicator. And what investigators have said is that in order for there to be, or to declare, because in reality the phenomenon of the Nino and the Niña are actually declared. So in order to have the Nino effect, those values have to be they have to be above 0.5 degrees for 3 consecutive months in order for the Nino effect, even for the Niña as well. So if we had a low temperature and it was only 1 month, then nothing happened. But if we had a low temperature for 1, 2, 3 months, then we declare it a Nino effect or Niña effect. So what we show you here, we show you the conditions of the Nino from the central line, which are the conditions of the Niña from the bottom and Nino to the top, and from 0.5 plus or 0.5 minus. So one would say, very easy. Okay, so if something maintained over 3 months consecutively over 0.5, then it's going to be a summer. So my water supply is going to go down. Nope, bad news. No, sometimes we have Nino conditions that are above the values that have been declared officially, but on the contrary, they present, and this is an example that we have from the San Carlos waters, that we have some very bunch of differences here. So what's happening? We're in the Nino, so why do we have so much water? I have no idea. That's a phenomenon that's happening. So all that information, we're taking this in, and we're integrating it into these analysis in order to try to better our forecasting efforts. We have spoken a bit about the anomalies of the temperature of the sea. And really, with the climate conditions, we can't speak about facts itself. We can't really say something is certain. Yes, tomorrow it's going to rain. What we really talk about are probabilities, forecasts. And here's the topic. The topic gets a bit more complicated. Here we bring you a forecast, a probabilistic forecast associated with temperature of the sea. I'm not going to describe the whole graph, but basically what we're saying here is that this is for the period of November. This is the last one for November. And what we're showing here is that we do this every trimester. So October, November, December, November, December, and January, etc., etc. And what we're showing here is the probability of the phenomenon. So the green bar indicates neutral conditions. It's like what neutral conditions are, what historically have happened throughout the years. The blue bar is talking about Niña conditions, and the red bar is Niño conditions. So what we're showing here is really that for this trimester, October, November, December, there was a 91% probability that we had normal conditions. And so on with the other bars with the Niño and Niña conditions. And the graphs and the curves that are here that are crossing each other, each of the opposites. What they show is what have been the historical behavior in relationship with each of these variables compared to the previous trimesters or quarters. So these are only probabilities. We would say there's a 90% chance that we had rain, or there's a 10% chance that they won't rain. There are hundreds, I'm not sure if thousands, perhaps Joanna can tell us a bit later on, of models. In this topic, many people have investigated this topic regarding this, and they have developed hundreds of models that have been divided in two different loops. There's some models which we call statistical models, and there's some models that we call dynamic models. The model is nothing more than the representation of the hypothesis of phenomena that are happening in reality. Statistical models, what's happening? Investigators take all the history of what has happened throughout all the life of the information that we have, and they establish statistical correlations. They start saying the variables, the modes, the means, the averages, what probabilities are that there's one phenomenon or another. The dynamic models, on the contrary, what they do is they measure physically what is happening. They have apparatuses and technology that's special, and a specific ocean that they're constantly measuring these values based on that information or statistics, real or what's happening. They create a bunch of different statistical models, or models, perhaps I would say, and those models talk about the 0.5 plus and 0.5 negative again for the Niña and the Niño effects, 0 for the neutral effects. You see here what the experts call a feather, what they show is the tendency of where the models are heading towards. So here you see the big difference. So any of these models, dynamic models or statics models, they predict a behavior towards the future, which has this form, or another model predicts this form. So you see, there's not even a consensus in the forecast between different agencies. So what we do is we try to take all the group of different forecasts in order to determine the tendencies what these models are showing, and based on that, the experts will actually make their real forecasts. Oscillations, Median and Julian oscillations. That has been talked about a lot lately. Quickly, the oscillations made in Julia, what they do is they favor or unfavor the apparition of rain, especially in our country. These graphs, these brown graphs, are zones where there's no rain. The rain is inhibited. These green ones are where the appearance of rain is favored, and the green ones, when all the other climate effects tell us it should rain, we have to look at the Julia map and want to see if it really will rain. So I have to use this in my predictions. So this is a topic that has a lot of impact as well. With the hydrology forecasts, fortunately in Colombia we have institutions such as the EDM, which Carlos Lozano is present. He was the director at one point or another of the EDM. And based on all these alliances, they do some forecasts which Isagen uses, and all the other agents in the market base themselves in order to help themselves. So here simply the convention, what it shows is the probabilities. The blue are probabilities over 40 or 50% that there will be rain. The red ones 40, 50% that be dry season, and the white zones are neutral zones regarding what is normally managed historically. With that information, we forecast on the long term, where we take into account history, and we started making some forecasts in three different scenes. Hydrology forecast, an emergency plan and for a superior, or an emergency plan inferior, so to have different ranges in order, so we can have a better range to work with. The daily forecast, as I said, that were elaborated every day, forecast, and that's something for the energy markets, the energy stock market. We give them the information of what would be the behavior that's expected in the next few days, and how much energy we can actually create quickly. Isagen, EPM, and the metropolitan area of the Burra Valley, we bought jointly a radar. This radar is installed and is actually working. It's in the Santa Elena County, and it covers all the waterways of EPM, Isagen, and it gives us a lot of different precise information about the indexes of the clouds, and with that we're being able to have much better forecasts. Obviously, this is just a tool which all the agents that are participating have to be constantly feeding, and so that the models are as accurate as possible. But it's a very important tool, though. Where are we? We are committed to continuing to monitor our waterways. We're doing some deep studies, important studies that will actually let us model our waterways and measure constantly our hydrology. And we're having investigations regarding climate changes and hydraulic resources. We're working, we're prepared. We have technical personnel that's able to try to fight these headaches regarding and being as prepared as possible. Thank you very much. Now we're going to talk to Ricardo Lozano, the General Director of the EDM, international expert in climate change and sustainable development, geologist specialized in communication and news, with having 18 years experience working with the government and private sectors. He currently works as the president of People and Earth Company, which is in charge of the strategies, environmental strategies, and sustainable economics. He also works as a professor in a master's program in environmental from the Externado University in Colombia, and he has many others. He's going to be the moderator later on for our expert panel that we will have later on. Before beginning our panel, I want to tell you something. The people that are here on live can actually ask questions live when the moderator gives you the microphone, and the people that are connected via online streaming can send their questions via our chat system, and we'll have them given to our experts. If you have questions that can't be resolved here specifically, we invite you to write our email of our ir@isagen.com.co. Hello, Dr. Vasquez. Thank you for your invitation to this event, which is very important. I believe that let's invite our panelists already to come up. Let's start having them start accommodating themselves. And I want to start by saying that for me it's a true pleasure to be in this event, because, as we saw before, companies such as Isagen start having some great efforts to share this type of information and to share data and share tendencies and forecasts and threats as well, and risks that the markets and investments can have regarding the energy sector, with investments that are made in this type of market. And no one's better more qualified than you analysts from the markets that are here, and hopefully you can ask some great questions. We're going to have a very dynamic panel with you. You guys can all participate with this panel, not only the ones that are sitting up there, the experts, but also you, the crowd, the public, which are very experts as well, maybe perhaps more experts than the people that are sitting up here. So let's remember we're in the day of the analyst. So the panel will have the following dynamics. I imagine that you guys have a lot of questions regarding what you've heard and what you have seen today, and we will try for you to have questions for the panelists. But people are also looking at us via streaming, and a lot of questions via chat will be worked with. But in order to break the ice, we will listen to we're going to close with some small conclusions regarding the previous presentations, especially what has to do with the impact of those regulations regarding gas for the company. What types of norms or regulations do we hope for them to be employed in our growth strategy regarding taking into account climate change? How is Isagen preparing itself to confront these challenges that you have seen of more than 18 models and 18 effects that the territory has to consider, that one would think that we can't really do much, but we're at the mercy of these dynamics in climate, but perhaps the climate change can be understood in part. As Carlos Mario said before, we don't really have all the answers regarding this, but what I say is we modify the atmosphere, global warming, we modify the atmosphere. Joanita, as Carlos Mario calls her, we modify the atmosphere, and now we have to face the consequences and the impacts and try to understand it. It's as simple as that. We are responsible for modifying the atmosphere. Now we have to face the consequences. But we can plan ahead and be prepared to reduce these risks and those threats, especially in the investment. And also, something such important as the presentation of the strategy for growth, which we heard. The presentations had a very interesting order. I said, we're going to show you the strategy of growth. How is Isagen preparing itself in order to mitigate its risks? You saw that the majority of things are risks. There's a lot of threats. How is the company facing these? How are they going to face these challenges? Because of regulatory challenges or climate changes or threats. There's many other threats, but we're talking about these two in specifics, where the company is facing right now in order to meet its growth goals. So that's why the growth model that we saw earlier on was based on that type of information. And then we're going into further detail. So what we're going to do now in the panel is break the ice between the experts of Isagen and the big professionals in Isagen. When we also spoke to Dr. Vasquez a little earlier. I know Isagen for a long time now, for over 20 years now, I think. And Isagen is not the only one that has to. Isagen has a lot more to tell as well. Isagen was one of the companies that brought about many methodologies. From here, we have a lot of guides, priorities for policies, public policies that influence the governmental policies in Colombia. It was the Colombian policy that was not just built out of the blue. They weren't building it alone. Isagen had a big part based on a lot of the experience of companies such as Isagen. That's how these regulations were built. That's how the national green policies were built. So it has a long story and long history uh, of how to face these challenges, and also how to reduce the environmental impacts that are caused because of our projects or different energy projects, such as the ones that Isagen has. And in this type of processes, that many of the experiences and lessons learned by Isagen are being contemplated in national policies. Because of some experiences that we've had, a lot of public policies were actually formed. So we're going to speak about these two topics and some great stories, and present how Isagen has been presenting a lot of these risks and different fronts from different fields. So to start, I would like to, let's see, who's the first? Joanita? Joanita, I would like you to tell us a bit, tell the public, in a very short period, because you guys are going to be asked a lot of questions later on. But Isagen, with those great uncertainties that Carlos Mario's told us about, that I was scared to tell you about these 18 phenomena that Colombia has, but Carlos Mario did it very well. In front of all those 18 phenomena that influence on our climate, and that nowadays have been modified because of climate change and because the atmosphere has changed, and how is Isagen facing this? Well, as Carlos Mario said, we are on permanent investigations. We do follow-ups to our resources and the variability in order to be able to make forecasts that are as approximated as possible, as accurate as possible for the next few years, especially for the variability part for the climate, which, as you say, has changed a lot. That our hydrology cycles and our annual cycles are not the same as the one we were waiting for before. We have to again renew to start making new studies in order to see and hopefully try to forecast what's going to happen in the next few years. And Isagen, at this particular moment, in order to prepare for that, we have an initiative for climate change, which is an initiative to investigate, continually investigate that topic, develop new models, investigate regarding the history. I saw in your presentation, and I was telling Dr. Vasquez how interesting it would be for you to make an emphasis on the adaptation topic. When we talk about climate, we have two different terms that are very important. One is mitigation, reducing greenhouse gases, which we saw, and but also adaptation. I think we briefly discussed that, but I think maybe we can have part of an Isagen strategy. Yes, exactly. That strategy that we have of initiative and climate change is to give that adaptation. Yes, climate change is already happening. We can't do anything about that climate change that's already happening, but how are we going to operate our central plants? How are we going to develop projects such as hydrology? How are we going to complement one thing with the other in order to be able to have that support? And additionally to that, in the moment when we say, yes, hydrology has a cycle, it has some waterways which are deficient in certain areas of the month and times of the year. We have the thermal energy to be able to run as backups. Very well, Marta Cecilia, or Joan. Could you please tell us a bit more about the impact we saw very closely? Thank you, Joanna, by the way. We saw very closely the norms, the regulations from the CREG and the regulations that technically you explained. How can one summarize the impact within Isagen, and what are the norms that one would hope that the CREG would assume, or what would be missing in order to complement everything that has to do with the market of gas, and the predictions that you make as a summary of what we saw, the norms from the Energy and Gas Regulatory Commission, CREG, on the impact on Isagen? Well, I'll start with energy. Energy, we hope that by next year, that the energy regulated area is going to have 80% of our income will be by contract. So since we're going to have a new contract form, it's going to have greater energy increases. So, so for by when? The Craig says that the definite resolution should come out in December, this December, January, or February. No, they say because it's something they're doing on a study of competitiveness, and the government is very interested in having all these participants. They need a more transparent structure of contracting for energy. So I know that Craig is betting big on that, and the agents as well. The first auction, when will it happen? Might happen in the second quarter or third quarter of the year. That's what they said in the regulatory agenda. So that agenda is just in the proposal phases. The final agenda hasn't come out yet. That's what the most important thing in the energy area they can have impact Isagen for right now would be. So let me pass John. I can say that one of the most relevant things is this. We're talking about the transaction schemes in the markets. That's going to allow us to have greater possibilities to contract gas in the long term for reliability, and for short term to generate and have backup energy as well, to back up the hydrology energy. Basically, the scheme will allow us through the market management to make reforms to our information system, which will help us orient or indicate to the long term how we should move in our contracting regarding gas. Equally, in the day-to-day, we have to buy in a secondary market at good prices and competitive prices, and have all the information available, which was very difficult before. It was very difficult to have gas because we didn't know who had it, but now the information system is going to facilitate the process, because before we had to go directly or indirectly to providers. And that topic, offer versus demand, the conclusions was that they're reducing the offer and they're increasing the demand. Therefore, we had in the scenes, the curves that you showed us on your graphs, really the planning unit and the mining department really determines the long-term of supply and demand, and it gives us some indications of that we're going to have gas available, and to understand the demand fully up to the year 2018. And we saw in the presentation that in the Atlantic coast we're going to have the main field in the country, which is Guajira in the coast, and that's going to impede that some of our thermal plants in the Sogamosa will be reached. That's why the government is implementing some regulations which are going to cater to this plant in the coast that is actually being forecasted for around Cartagena, which will help those plants have that gas available to them so they can generate more security for the country, to generate more electricity wherever it's required. And as we said before, the great field in this moment are the Acupiagua plants, and they're required to the transportation of gas needs to be strengthened so that these gas could reach the thermal plants. So Isagen is actually working on this and transportation of gas so that they can use this gas in different areas. So thank you very much. We'll go a little more into depth later on this. Javier, within these two scenes, these two risks that we saw, the topic of the growth of the company, I saw you a bit happy and excited about showing your strategy of growth based on 90% renewable energy and non-conventional energy. I believe that there's very few companies in the country, companies such as Isagen, which are betting on a growth strategy that's completely green and renewable energy. How are you personally, or what about the legal framework? How can the legal framework be prepared in order to complement and strengthen this type of initiatives, where one would say, yes, Isagen is going the right path, because when we see the same policies that are being applied in the United States, it's like that. It's to try to give incentives to greener energy and lessen those for carbon energy. So that's what they're doing in the U.S. So is the country prepared for that? What is missing? What is lacking? Normally, we have a difficulty for the development of this type of energy, and it's just traditionally Colombia has been a country which is rich in waterways and hydrology. So any technology that comes might have some difficulties to being adapted in order to compete with the local market hydrology. But that's under the normal conditions in the country. But it may be that when there's some climate threats or gas threats or other series of things that come, it's necessary to strengthen our company in different sources that are complementary. So hydroelectric continues to be the main source, and it is able to give us enough energy that the country requires. But we still need to diversify our portfolio and allow the company in order to be continue to be one of the cleaner energy companies, and hopefully be completely clean. And second, to prepare for climate change in the future. And the regulatory part is it's clear as well that the country is been taking steps already. I think last year the wind energy regulation came out. In Colombia, there's no limitations right now to generate this type of energy. But yes, sometimes we're missing some regulations here. For geothermic energy, for example, they haven't had trustworthy regulations yet. But the CREG has assumed some of these challenges, and we hopefully will expect word from them soon. We consider that we have to continue to check the trustworthiness factors for the wind energy as well, because under normal conditions, perhaps they don't give some firmness in regarding climates, but it can possibly be important, because the wind is complement to hydrology. If there is no water in the country, then there might be good wind, so that could be an alternative. So we'll continue speaking about this later on. Dr. Vasquez, what about, in order to close this first cycle, introductory cycle, I believe I'm going to ask you a question, and I believe a lot of people here that are present would like to tell you the topic relating to the sale of Isagen. We have all these beautiful things coming, all this growth, and what Javier just told us about, all of us that believe about this topic of the big Colombian, that this is a great for Colombia, a patrimony for the country. So now what happens now with the topic of the sale of Isagen? Are they selling it? Are they not selling it? And if they sell it, what's going to happen with all of this? Thank you very much. The first thing is to mention that Isagen, since the year 1999 or 1997, has been known for various initiatives for stocks. First in 2000. And 2009, 2010, and one we're doing now. Since the beginning, we always understood that independently from the intention of that major stockholder, the company had to continue. So all of our plans, all our objectives, all our goals will continue independent of who's the major stockholder. As you can see, we have a company that's completely competent in all of the areas that are being introduced, and I believe that this will truly have an impact and make our company a model, and be an enviable company that any of the people that are interested in buying it will value it and will maintain it within their goals. I believe that the majority of us that are here share it. Well, regarding the topic of the sale, what I can say is that what we're saying, Isagen is not selling it. What the state is selling their major share, their shares. Isagen is not actually selling itself. It's the government that's actually selling their part. and through some public information and contacts that we've had through this process, is that the government has a serious intention of selling. So I think they might, the 19th of November, for example, yeah, the 18th of November, they published their offering, and the 19th they published a regulation regarding the sale, and they opened the first phase, which goes until the 20th of January, where some of you personally can buy, and we as employees can also buy some shares, and from there we can estimate that there can be maybe 30 or more days in order to sell to the solidary sector, and then we'll have the second phase, which will have to a strategic investor. There's a website that the government has put all their information, the decree, the regulations, etc. And the data is already there. The regulation of the second phase has also been done. It's going to be done through the Colombian stock market. There's going to be a first round where all the interested parties that are going to be pre-qualified according to the criteria that was established, where basically if there's a company that has to have 500 megabytes of capacity, or at least experience in operating of at least 500 megabytes, and $500 million of assets, or if they don't have that, they have a joint venture with operators that do have this quantity. And the two best offers that are given to us are going to be looked at. So to the moment, that's what we have, and the government continues to say that they're going to sell, but there are some legal litigations that are trying to stop it. But let's say the government's intentions and the news are that what has been said publicly is that they are going to sell. Carlos Mario, so afterwards, I will give you the microphone again, after, because I think Joanita and they're distributing themselves to answer some other questions. So I'm going to start taking questions from the audience. Could you please say your name and what company you come from? Andres Cardona from Pactual, from the Actual newspaper. And those projects that we've seen, and energy generation plants, it looks like you're having high costs. And the relationship with communities. My question is, could that affect the returns that the company may have in that project, and to generate difficulties to develop the structure that the company needs? And the second question would be on the side of the gas. Recently we had the process of contracting, and we would like to know what deadlines Isagen would have, and what are the maximums that the regulation would have in order to contract. Thank you very much. The first question, who would like to answer that question? That's a very interesting question. I would begin with the end. Isagen, what they're trying to do is they're trying to find feasible projects that will have high return on investments, and in that sense, that's where we're heading to, their development. And then the bottom line, what I want to say is we only build projects which returns are more than our return on capital. I'm not going to tell you what our cost of capital, but you should already have that. It's around 9%, our cost of capital. So regarding the cost of the projects, I would dare to go into a field which is not my particular expertise, but I believe that there's some indications that can give us some signals. One, that each project is very different. It's not the same to say that the same to have a project with a small company than with a larger company. It's not the same to have a project that with a central electrical, with a big 40 kilometer tunnel, with a smaller company compared to a smaller company. It's not the same to have a small water project where the area that's affected is very minimum, so the investments that have to be made and the environmental factors have to be less. And it's not the same as a big project where you have to invest a lot more. Each project is different. Nonetheless, what I would say is, at the world level, and Colombia is not the exception, the precautions that have to be implemented now, and environmental factors and social factors, are ever more demanding and they're more complete. This has a big impact on the projects themselves. So what has to do with the actions that are related to social environment. And regarding the other topics and the cost of equipment, etc., what has to do with engineering, with the civil area, with the part of equipment, I believe that since 2008, and we have seen very competitive prices that were due to the international financial crisis that happened in 2008, which had allowed us to have more efficiencies. I would say that. I don't know if Javier would like to add something. What does he know about the topic? Yes, perhaps I would like to add that yes, that's true. The projects are more costly every day because regulations, environmental regulations are stricter, and communities participate every day more. And there's more social factors, and this makes it a bit more strict. That means that each project that we do will make us review our plans every single time and recalculate and as we said before, in each phase, Isagen and the pre-feasibility phase, such in the feasibility phase, we do our financial analysis and we decide whether it's feasible or not, and we do the project only if it's feasible. If not, we don't do it because it's not viable, it's not feasible economically, and it can't be done. Thank you very much. We have another question here. Oh, sorry, Ricardo. In the gas, the deadlines are determined on the way that the gas is going to be sold on the primary market. In the presentation, we spoke about the balance of the USME, which indicates what methodology is going to be applied for the commercialization of gas. In that case, if there's some restrictions to meet the demand from 3 to 5 years of planning, which is the USME does, it's established that it should be an auction, and if there is no, or if we don't see restrictions, then they establish it in a bilateral fashion. So in the case of auctions, when there are restrictions in those 3 years, we would use the deadlines that are used for the commercialization, and then that would be from 1 to 5 years. But if they are in a bilateral fashion, there's no problems, then the regulation allows 5 or more years. In this process, which we just determined, that condition was present, that bilateral condition, and they established contracts of more than 5 years. In that process, Isagen hired gas for 1 year, and that means that in 2014 we're going to have gas available in order to generate 100% on our plant. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Guido Bitrago from Pan Colombia. The question goes to Javier and Carlos Mario. There's 2 questions. The first is related to the topic of Sogamoso. We very well know that next year the operation of this central plant will start. I would like to know when it is forecasted to start filling the reservoir, and see what the hydrology factors will be for next year. How much time is this? With the Sogamoso River, because it's part of a chain that originates and it goes through the Suarez River, and it has an impact on that hydrology. I would like to know how latent and what could the impact be, or the problem be, which has been currently starting to be known, or been known for a while, for 10 to 15 years, which is sedimentation, which is a national problem. And I have heard in several occasions projects regarding that lagoon, the drilling of that lagoon and sedimentary process. And from here on, can that have effects on Sogamoso principally, or mainly? And well, because I'm part of the. There's a team that's in charge of that production, but I'm part of the administration. So Sogamoso is going very well. It's already 85% advanced in their works, and they're thinking about starting filling the reservoir at the end of the first trimester. And I can't give you an exact date, but the idea is to start having by the second quarter of 2014. I'm not sure how long it will take to fill the reservoir. I'm not sure how long. Maybe the lagoon now of Fukame is in the top part of the reservoir. The reservoir is very big. It goes from the Magdalena River in Barranca Bermeja to the part in Condi Boyacá. That zone is part of the corporation of Boyacá. It's autonomous of Boyacá, and some parts of that lagoon are part of the regional jurisdiction of Cundinamarca. There are some resources that Isagen will transfer to those corporations because they're required to by law, and those transfers have to do. They have to be destined specifically to control contamination and to manage the environment of this reservoir. So I believe that you have to look at it from the point of view that those resources that are being transferred because of the generation of electricity must be applied to that type of project. So that's what those resources are for, to maintain the reservoir. And those resources are 6% of the gross generation at the price of sales from established by the CREG. That regulation has already been established. And the other thing is, the other question about sedimentation in the lagoon. That's a problem that we thought about when we were designing the plan. It was a very discussed problem. We discussed it with a lot of experts, international and national experts, and that has been calculated into the plan. The effect has already been looked at. Thank you very much, I believe. In order to broaden the question, the answer a bit, and by the end of October, Sogamoso was already 87.5% finished. As he mentioned, the Senate, we expect to end to fill it by the end of February or the beginning of March. It can take about 2 to 3 months approximately to fill. And what is forecasted is that once it's filled, we will be testing around the end of May, so that the plant will start operations at the end of the third quarter. Let's say around the first of semester, hopefully we'll have the plants working. The challenges or risks for this that happen in order to fill the reservoir. There's two risks. One is that the roads that are going to be flooded have to be ready. And there's no real difficulties here, so we're going to be ready in that aspect. And the other risk is the cleaning of the baso, which is removing all of the organic material from the area which is going to be flooded. Those are the two fronts which we're working on in order to be able to flood the area. In order to test, ISA has to have also had finished the interconnection lines. Those are the three fronts or elements that are critical for the project to start operations. Here's a topic that's very interesting that has come out of many of the questions. Let's say that two questions are related about the social area, environmental area. I'm not sure, Dr. Vasquez, if Giovanni and Carlos Mario belong to that direction of that administration, because obviously that's a topic that's very broad. It has a lot of discussions. I'm not sure if that's the objective of today, to go more into depth in this topic, or should we have another event just to talk about these specific environmental aspects, or if Joanna and Carlos Mario can actually answer a lot of these questions now, because that's a topic that's a lot, or very big, very broad, and it's critical. And I believe that it may have room for a whole event just on that. We can continue with these topics if we want. No, I believe it's okay to measure ourselves. Carlos Mario says that he wants to make a reflection, because the questions are so important on the environmental side, especially like, for example, Bucame. Is Isagen going to be involved in the workings or in the restoration and the recovery of the Sogamosa River, etc., and all of its tributary rivers? What is the participation going to be? What is the environmental workings going to work? How are they going to treat those? How are they going to invest in the recovery in their hydrological reservoirs upstream? Carlos Mario, I am more than just simply answering the 7, 8 questions that you just made in this 30 seconds. That's why I said, well, should I make them or not? Because those are topics which are a bit broad. I see that a lot of people will probably be asking the same types of questions. So maybe we might deviate ourselves from the final goals of this first workshop, which is very focused principally on the energy market and gas, and the topic of risk and hydrological risk and climate risks. And that is a very big concern. I'm going to simply make a reflection, and sorry, Javier, because I know he's in charge, so you have to forgive me, but I will make a reflection. The reflection has to do with the policy in general that Isagen has regarding this topic and the relationships with the communities. I really should say with pride, with my mouth super happy, that Isagen is a model, not only in the national level, but at the international level. It's recognized by many instances and agencies and many regulatory bodies that are checking these songs in the excellent manner which Isagen is working with the communities. So we're a model. And jointly with the and Isagen is not really assisting, though. What we're doing is we're not really an assisting role, but we are working closely with communities, though. And because let me highlight something that happened recently, and in the administration that Javier is managing, we have something to show. And as this Amoya Central that actually came live, and that's an area where there's in the canyon of the Hermosas, which is a conflict area, and it's operating nowadays, and it's currently operating, and society itself, the community, loves it and values it and respects it, because finally it has become a pole of development, and that shows how Isagen is working with the communities and the commitment that we have. Next question. I would reinforce, sorry for interrupting, with recognition. We're not really after recognition, but they give it to us. That's just showing the way that we're working. We have been included in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. We have gained some prize of Andesco, social responsibility for many years. And really, as Javier showed, it's part of the soul of Isagen is to understand that Isagen is immersed in a society, and that society has to progress at the same pace as Isagen. And that progress, that welfare, that well-being is through the social development for their interest groups and their stakeholders, through the taking care of the environment, and I forgot what the last part was. Protection and economic development. That was the third for the communities. Thank you very much. Next question. Ivan Yukopila from CalDAC. The question is a bit different than what we've been talking about and the environmental side, but it's a topic that continues in the reports, from the management reports. It's related to the price of energy and volatility, the cost of energy. Can you tell me a bit about the volatility and the prices of energy? What is the reason why the price of energy is so volatile? Because in the management reports, you see in the last report, you see a big increase in the cost of energy in the stock market. And as you showed in the presentation, Isagen, 80% of their energy, they sell it by contract. And they don't pick that. They don't pick those favorable conditions up because they sold it directly. So you're not really being favored by these increases in prices. So what is what is that volatility? Why is this happening? And how can you mention in Colombia, for example, we have not seen an increase, a significant increase in the demand. So, able to make that approximation, or do you have that knowledge of why these fluctuations happen? That's the first question. And my second question is, how are we on the international scale regarding costs of energy and prices? Are we very costly? And according to what has happened, and what happened under some certain special conditions, what happened to Brazil, for example, when the government intervened because of inflation, and they interfered in the energy industry. So what vision do you have regarding that vision, and how are we regarding the international scene as well? Oh, regarding volatility of the price in the stock market, well, it's a fact that that's the price where the supply and demand happens daily. So all the conditions that are particular to a day from the generators come regarding versus demand. So in the past year, we have seen great volatility due to because demand offer has been reduced, so demand has increased because because they haven't had availability that's been very clear. Because centrals have not really big central plants have not entered, and the country has grown a lot since 2002. So the first auction would be 2012, 2013. So we were just starting now. So hopefully Sogamoso and Kimbo will also enter soon. And the thermic plants had a contract in gas, and the contract started ending, and they started having paying for more expensive fuels, and that's a big change in the offer. Additionally, even though hydrology has been normal, has been deficit in several parts. There has been deficit of water in certain areas of the country, so certain reservoirs have not been to their maximum capacity, as Joanita spoke before. So, as Joanita said, as we didn't historical behavior for our reservoir. Sometimes we had some summers, dry seasons in certain plants, and that has made that the stock market price, the price has gone up in certain months. Generators, we have a lot of contracts energy sold, but since every day there's a balance of what we generate and what we have contracts, sometimes we sell on the market and sometimes we buy on the energy markets as well. So we see some results from all the generators. Sometimes we see big purchases on the markets, and sometimes we see sales of energy in the market on certain months. They fluctuate. This year we have had a lot of sales on the market thanks to having had the contracts with gas. So a lot of generators did not have contracts with gas. Some of the ones in the interior of the country, but Isagen had thermal center pretty firm throughout the whole year. You have seen in our results that we have a historical generation this year, the maximum that we have had in the whole history, and that has helped us increase revenue in the markets. Now, comparing the prices of energy, you have known that people have complained about prices. The companies have made complaints that there have been some studies of competitiveness of prices where the government was actually very involved, and the different supply chain members were participated. And the result is that Colombia has an average prices regarding energy, and regarding commercialization, distribution, restrictions of the network, and some other costs that makes our increases, our rates to rise a bit. We're in medium conditions. We're not at the highest though. The government has given some tranquility to the markets that they're not going to interfere in any of the factors of the supply chain, but we do have to revise how we're going to remunerate the different sectors. But we don't think there's going to be a government intervention like what they had in Brazil, where ISA was actually had a problem. But in Colombia, we don't think that's going to happen. But the market is changing, so we have to constantly be looking and updating our strategies. For Isagen, we don't see any impact on the medium term because the generation is very good in the study and what is seen for the future. The trust factor is a mechanism that is just starting to come in. The first auctions are going to happen in 2012, 2013. That's a mechanism that we can better, of course, but it has been determined that Sogamoso is going to join these auctions, that Kingo is doing this, and these are mechanisms that are pretty successful in order to foster the growth in the country, but it also can have improved, of course. Very well, thank you very much. Good morning, my name is Jaime Perosa of Credit Corp Capital. I'm going to ask a question which is a bit uncomfortable. Due to the process of the sale of the participation of the country of Isagen, many people have speculated about possible synergies that a strategic investor can have. My question would be uncomfortable because comparisons are always hateful, but I would like to understand the difference between the margins that Isagen currently has and some margins that are presented by other companies in Colombia that are also hydrology based that present margins over 50% of EBITDA regarding Isagen, that they're making more. Some have speculated that could be the way that impacts the prices that Isagen can have. And is this really viable? Are there a way to increase the EBITDA of the company? And does this imply some sacrifices in the company in terms of their environmental aspects? Will there be any sacrifices made? There are many circumstances where we could try to explain why the cost of Isagen or the margins of Isagen are not the same as the HESA or Chivol, because I'm not sure if I think you're just talking about those companies. Maybe HESA has had some interesting results in some semesters, but it's some circumstance factors because of volatility that we spoke about a little bit earlier and regarding the markets. There are some elements that they mentioned in Isagen. One is the topic that we have a construction plan that's very aggressive. When we started building in Sogamoso, Sogamoso was more or less had a cost of 4.1 billion, and Isagen was only a company of 4.5 billion in assets. So practically, we were building a whole other Isagen in cost terms. Not all of our coasts are associated with Sogamoso. They're also associated with Manso, with Guarino, other areas, and in Calderas as well. They can be capitalized. A lot of those were going to the GDP, and they affected the margins as well. Additionally, there's something we had mentioned here as well, and it's our social responsibility practices. This is not really too expensive. Really, our concerns. This is about 10 billion annually, but that's really not too costly. And another thing is that we need to look at is the way in which how we modernize our plants. Seen by international experts, by boards of experts, by international advisors, they say that our central plants are some of the ones that are best maintained in the whole world, the ones that have the most guarantees to extend their useful life, and that also has a cost that's attributed to it. So let's say that in the short term, we might not show the same margins of profit, but we do guarantee sustainability for all of our profit for the long term. Some topics that are minor to this, we also have some plants in high-risk areas. We had to transport workers from San Carlos and Calderas in helicopters. So there's a series of circumstances that increase the prices have been making different. The fact that we have 7 plants and not one, the geographic location, the influence areas, the Miel Central plant is the last one that joined the operations, and year by year the environmental authorities continue to increase the activities that we have to abide by. So all these topics have to be taken into account. Thank you very much. Anything else? Let's continue. Good morning. I'm Juan Camilo Martinez from BTG Factual. I have a question related to the environmental licenses. How have you seen the impact of all the delays in environmental licenses for the projects that you have? Another question is, if we look back about a year before they talked about the sale of Isagen, what happened more than Sogamoso? What was there further than Sogamoso? Because even though Sogamoso, we have just a bit more than a year for it to go into full effect, let's say that it's already going to enter the market. But what was going to happen after? If we look back a year back, what was going to happen after Sogamoso? Why do I talk about a year back? Because now we see a possible sale by the government, and even though the administration of Isagen has its own policies to continue with their growth, after a sale, we really can't be sure of what's going to really happen. So what was going to happen? What was the plan a year ago before they notified us of the sale? Well, regarding the environmental licenses, it's clear that it's a problem that not only has affected Isagen, but affects the whole industrial sector and the infrastructure of the whole country as a whole. The works itself from the government works that done by the government themselves, there's a lot of complaints because of the licensing delays. Licenses are a very complex process, and because it includes communities, indigenous communities, participation, everything that has to do with the government controls, citizen control, and other than that, we also believe that the institutions that are in charge of giving these licenses are also technically weak, and they also don't have enough resources to handle all these licenses, and this is a bad that affects us all. Isagen participates with a large part of the industrial sector, and some tables that are high-level tables where we take all these problems and we set them on the table. But this is a problem where we don't really have a complete answer. More than it's just something that happens to all of us and delays projects on all areas and logically introduces new costs. Regarding what there is now or what there will be, it's clear that before Sogamoso, Isagen was also developing this whole portfolio of projects. And it's the portfolio of projects. There were some projects that are in the processing of licensing, that are in the design phase, some that are in the licensing, environmental license phase, with some in the pre-feasibility phase. In the moment that the market requires it, Isagen has projects to present to the market and to go out live with them. Can you tell us a little bit about them or not? No, some in the immediate manner and some in the long term. Can you guys tell me about those projects, Dr. Vargas, about the projects? Yes, we have been telling you guys. Periodically in the webpage, there's some information on the projects. The biggest project we have is Cañafisto. It's a project of 960 megabytes that's located in the Cauca River in Antioquia, between Aizabolo and Molombolo, around that zone. It costs about 5 to 6 billion pesos, and it was in the last auction. It was proposed in the last auction. It's like Javier said, we're complementing all of the studies so that when the demand in Colombia has a growth that requires that project to come out, then we propose it at that particular moment. Additionally, in Santander, we are also working with Piedra del Sol project, which is a project that today I believe that that's a medium project, if I'm not mistaken, of 160 megabytes. It's also ready to be done. We wouldn't even need to do this in the auction. We can do this. We're doing this in a society with HMB, the wind energy project in the Guajira, which is 132 megabytes. It's also ready to go. We are working with some financial topics at the end, but we are already achieving some costs that allow the project to be profitable. Perhaps the most important element has to do with the connection and with the lines of Sol Rejon, the geothermic project we're working very seriously with in order to be able to develop that technology in Colombia. There's a project is to start drilling looking for oil and looking for oil and try to find the water which produces vapor as well. And there's some other projects that are on the waiting list. Maybe they're not as developed as this, but they're also being planned. So thank you very much. Questions? How is the project in Hidrosogamoso going that ISA had, which is a bit delayed? And the other question is, we have seen some valuations in the prices compared with the prices in the stock market, different The prices don't coincide with the prices that you guys are selling with the market prices, because we work with the prices of X and M. What can you do with other companies jointly that you have spoken to and that you have agreements with? Is there a way that you can give us something that reflects reality a bit more, not so much a perfect market? Well, regarding your first question, ISA is already working on this topic. They have to construct some lines. The date that they have given us is May 31, if I'm not mistaken, of 2014. And there's a meeting that's monthly where ISA and Isagen share the advances, and there's no elements that have been reported that have moved that date. So we have that date. It's fixed. And regarding what X and M, well, what X and M shows in their analysis is marginal costs regarding the conditions that they see. The stock market is already in a place where the agents already put their expectations. Agents, we can't get together because we can't. This is an anti-monopoly practice. It's anti-monopolistic, so we cannot agree on prices. We can't set prices. That's illegal. So each one has to. We can't sit down with our agents. We have norms that we have to follow. Anti-monopoly, antitrust laws. We do have to look at the future price in contracts, because the regulation itself. We all have contracts with different due dates. Commercializers have different projects for different dates. So the price of energy is very difficult to set, because that's how regulation is set, and that's how we have to. Because we all have different factors of what happens in each plant, and in each company there's differences. Lisa, would you like to say something else? Very well. Thank you very much. Well, good morning. Thanks to all the panel. Thanks for having us here. My name is Carlos Anaya from Colfondos S&A. I would like to have a general description of the conditions of administering or supply chains for the gas that the thermal center plant has had throughout 2013. And can you tell me a bit about those conditions that are going to happen in terms of the contracts that are going to be happening in 2014? Very well. Here they're asking me to clear something up before I answer that question. Well, Thermal Center is a plant that has generated a lot, and it expects to generate more because of the system. But when we enter Sogamosa, Thermal Center will always be a backup plant, like a child, like for the phenomenon of the Niño, because we almost always have a generation that's hydrology based, which is very important, which we're going to increase with the entrance of Sogamosa, of course. Here I also wanted to clear something up. That's very interesting. We were speaking about, at this particular moment, you said precisely that this year we had some minimum water supplies. Remember, they announced the phenomenon of the Niño last year, that they possibly would have another phenomenon of the Niño this year. As Carlos Mario said, we can't just trust the Niño and the Niña effects. I believe that many of you only look at that for the director of the IDIAM to say, yes, there's Niño and there's Niña, or if the president to come out, yes, there's going to be Niño, or no, there's not going to be Niña. I believe some of you have read the Tiempo newspaper where they said not necessarily if there's Niño or Niña will there be undersupply of energy. Today, the climate, because of the effects that Carlos Mario showed, is being affected, which what I said before, with global warming, etc. So we have to continually monitor month by month, each 15 days, or the behavior of our weather. That's the main impact of global climate change in tropical countries. Now it's not whether the Pacific Ocean behaves a certain way or not, but really we have to see the local effects as well, and see how they changed. And definitely everything changed. Now the challenge is that for authorities, the climate authorities, it's not that we're alone here. Companies are not just blind here. No, there's an entity. The IDIAM is here. That's the IDIAM, the climate authority that helps us, and they are the only ones that can really tell us yes or no, and they assume the risk of telling us if there is Niño or not Niño. But more than just Niño or Niña, we also need to see what's going to happen in the next 3 months regarding the climate. So perhaps it took a while longer to start it. We didn't really have much rain. We had dry seasons that are historical in Tolima, for example, without a Niño effect. A little bit is happening in Bogota and Medellin, and rains a bit more than in Bogota, but I give you the example of Bogota. In Bogota, we have had only five raining days that have really impacted, really hard rainy days, but not with the periodicity or the current, the way that we were used to in Bogota. In fact, rain is supposedly going to end in 15 days, so we really didn't have a rainy season this year, and now we're going to have dry season, so it's going to be a strong dry season, which is January, February, and March. So therefore, we spoke that it's imperative that companies work jointly with authorities and climate authorities, and they are working. Isagen has partnerships with the EDM, but that information, that local information that is so important, that you guys can give to the institute like EDM, which really has to be the one responsible saying yes or no that these events, these dry seasons are coming in the next 2 months or in 1 month, etc. Not necessarily to predict for the whole year. So that's also important to clear up within everything we're speaking about. But we also have to say yes. Yes, there is an authority that has to assume the role and work a bit stronger with you regarding the information. That's why this event is so important. You were going to say something. Yes. Talking about the supply of thermal center in 2013, 2014. For this topic, it's important to highlight that Isagen, since 2009, betted on gas as the energy that's going to be main for the generation in thermal center. That's why in that year we were able to take a guarantee about half of the supply for the generation in that year alone. And now in 2012, something important happened, that was the increase in the production in gas through the Cupiagua Ecopetrol plant. That combination of those two events allowed Isagen to be able to achieve or get flexible gas and condition in 2013 in order to generate everything continually. And that's why Martha was highlighting a little while ago that we beat all our records in thermal center. We generated something almost continually in the plant, and that has helped us face all those phenomena that happened in this year and the hydrological sense. And because of those conditions, in 2014, the company decided to hire and farm for 1 complete year gas in order to cater to all the consumer demands for a generation, and which will continue to happen. And that's part of the strategy, the adaptation of the strategy. Are going to start behaving with the entrance of Sogamoso. We're trying to forecast this, and we need to start having supply decisions with the new scheme of commercialization that just came into effect this year. Let's continue. Again, I would like to take the advantage Juan Fernando talked about the budget from last year and for this year, or this year, 2013, where we met more than 50%. I remember that by this time last year, they published the budget for the 2013. I wanted to know if you guys, not being that this 2013 is almost over, do you have the budget for 2014 already? Is it on? Can we know a bit about the expectations of the country, or the budgets, the forecast for 2014, according to EBITDA and the margins for EBITDA? Do you have that information now? Can you make it public? Bertha, I was looking for Bertha because Bertha was telling me, insisting that we have the budget today, but we have some information laws, guidelines that we have to follow, international norms, and they approved the board already approved the way that our information is going to be handed out. But we, let's say, have a coal gap, and we publish both. So since we don't have coal gap yet, we didn't bring it. The proposal is better than last year, in fact. The budget is going to be better than last year. We're going to have some increases in EBITDA, close to 15%, regarding what we were estimating at this year, which were actually finishing greater than forecasted, and productivity at 6% because of the impact of the depreciation of Sogamoso that came into effect in the last trimester. regarding the margins, they're also better. I can't remember what the exact numbers are. I believe that we're talking about 29, 30% operational profits and 35, 36% of EBITDA margins. Very well. We will be publishing this information maybe Monday or Tuesday of next week. Well, good day and thank you for the presentation. Nicolas Garavito from the stock Nicolas Bursatigas stock market firm. The question has to do with financing ways for financing new projects. The company had to have had to increase a lot of debt for the Sogamoso project. So in what way how is the company going to meet its financial needs for these new projects? And I would like to know, in the study that was made in the sector, in the energy sector, they established that some self-generating plants were going to be able to offer their surplus energy system. And in case that is not achieved, will that affect the development of these projects per se? What was the first question again? Sorry. The financing of... Okay, yes. Yes, we don't have... Since these are projects that we don't have a certainty when they're really going to be launched, we don't really have financing plans yet for them. What we do always look for financing that is adequate for this type of project. That is to say, if these are projects that take about 4 or 5 years to build, well, we'll look for long-term debt. If they're bank debt, bank loans, maybe 10 to 12-year loans. Like, for example, we've done that with JP in Japan and Seguros de Hermes, etc. And complemented by the capital markets, where we've had a lot of desire. We want to join the international market, so possibly it could be a combination of credit from with some types of insurance such as Hermes, and the capital markets as well, international and national as well. And regarding the topic, it's true, in the study of competitiveness, there was a suggestion by the advisors that we should start looking at self-generation. They had a request by the industrial plant that allowed them to sell that. Craig said they were studying the topic, and the government said that they were looking at it as well. Likewise, the generators, say that we are always looking at supply and demand. The Craig is also seeing when they interfere with projects. We believe that the equilibrium the balance is going to be maintained. Since this is such an hydrology expansion, the prices are very competitive. Not all of the generation is going to be efficient in cost, but it is something that regulators are looking at, and we are building together. But it's a suggestion that was made in that study because of the suggestions by the industrial world, but there's nothing firm, concrete. All right, thank you very much. Let's continue. Good morning. Well, Paula Escalada from Horizonte, and the question is regarding the sale of Isagen. We would like to know if Isagen has studied the different scenarios and the impacts that could possibly have if the sale by the government has in terms of synergies, margins, rentability, profitability, cost of capital, and how that's going to affect new projects, which we know that these projects are subject to profitability and that they have the capital to make them happen. So what's going to happen with that price and the price of the stock, etc.? The first thing is what I said before. We continue with our model, with our strategy. We want that the new person that's going to buy the company and controls it is going to value it, and we hope that their new knowledge, that they bring their capital expertise, etc., what they have to bring to the table will allow us to enrich that model actually and project ourselves in a better fashion. And in that way we would hope to better the price of the stocks and better profitability, etc. Nevertheless, that depends on who's going to be the actual person that's going to buy it, the company that's going to buy it, what's their actual strategy, what's their valuation of what they're really trying to do, what their goal is with buying the company. We would only be speculating whether what buyer would do. We have done some internal examinations of what would be who would be the possible buyers. But let's not say that that's not information that I would say. We can't really tell you that information. That's just how we're preparing ourselves, just in case. So we'll be prepared to present to our new shareholders what we do, why we do it, and where we're headed, and try to get them on board, and so that they can buy that proposal from us and to maintain it and strengthen it. Andres Cardona again. I want to talk about gas again, and if it's possible to know at what price did the company contract, and what's going to happen with the contract that was current, and can you tell us when it expires? And in that same regulation, I need to know if you think there's a deficit in infrastructure for the transportation of gas, and if you believe that they're generating the sufficient incentives in order to meet that deficit in transportation. And as we spoke before in other companies in the sector, one of the difficulties that they found was to hire in the long term, because why the decision of doing it for only 1 year? The topic of prices, we can't really publish it, even though the Craig may have some of the information. There are some reference prices, like I showed you in the presentation before. We use those prices to base our contract for only 1 year. We contract on 1 year because of the expectations of Sogamosa, for example. We start looking year by year what the projections will be, and we make decisions based on those projections. Really, to buy gas, contract gas is very costly, so we have to do that in that short-term fashion, looking at it year by year. And the topic of the long term, it's important to ensure the trustworthiness factors. And in that scheme, what's most important for the generators are flexible schemes. I talked to them about the options of buying gas. Those options allow us to ensure to have the trustworthy factors in the long term. So Isagen, in that case, has already guaranteed for Thermal Center up to 2017 with options. So as you saw, this scheme does not allow us to generate day by day. However, the strategy is different. If it's short term, is one and short term we have to look at gas, and in long term more flexible methods. Next year we're going to have up to November 30th ensured all of the gas that we need in order to generate the capacity in Thermal Center by 100%. And we did it this way because the market gave us signals that they were willing to pay those contracts. And then the topic of infrastructure, there is a big problem that's regulation-wise. Regulation is not really being coordinated. The trustworthiness charges that demands that we have contracts for 4 or 5 years, and the schemes such as the one that Greg proposed where they force us to hire 1 to 5 years. So the regulation really contradicts itself. There's no coordination. There's a different coordination in times in those regulations, which we've asked the coordination to actually revise, because it's a very complex topic. As Dr. Rico said, our general manager says, they do this as we were building a puzzle year by year in the hiring for this. Thank you very much. Here a question arrived from the web, from Natalia Godella, from Bancolombia Valores. It says, good morning. Can you tell me a bit more about the law project of the ecological waterways? What effect could that have on Isagen? What is the probability that this project stays firm? What is the position of Isagen? The problems regarding the environment, very important. Joanna, well, the effect that it has for Isagen and for the whole, all generators really, the project is still open to comments. That affects all of these projects of strict regulation. Juanita, let me interrupt you. A question. What is ecological waterway? What is ecological waterway? Ecological waterways are what we call, or what we are implementing now. That one's what we were using. We were using downstream before, and so are you talking about only downstream or upstream? Only downstream, because we are capturing the centrals that were built 40, 50 years ago, where there was no actual law about waterways. They took the whole water from the river, and downstream they had a big dry time, maybe for a long distance, until natural subsidiaries and new tributaries will start continuing to flood this area again. Or perhaps it goes back to the main river through new tributaries that are formed. There are some new regulations that now exist regarding these ecological waterways. There are many different ways to calculate it, and what this regulation, or we're talking about, hopes to achieve is to make uniform that type of that calculation, and that would affect us a lot because the restrictions are increased a lot, and we have to leave the waterways with a lot of current. I can only take a bit of current for my generation. I can't take the whole anymore because of these new regulations. So that's going to impact the economics and maybe make some things unviable, or we have to study whether some things are viable or unviable with these new restrictions taken into account. The project is under discussion right now. It's an investigation by the National University. They have done many workshops with a lot of the stakeholders and generators, and we have had a lot of comments and follow-ups to this topic. However, we don't really have something clearly defined yet. What you say is, yes, that the hydrological projects have always left a minimum waterways, but downstream. But now what they're trying to do is regulating the amount of current that is taken from those waterways. Like, for example, the ADM, the regional governments. There's different methodologies used by different entities. Of course, this is just, we're trying to unify all these regulations so they don't have different ones from different companies and different entities. I know it's very difficult to talk about price, but given that a lot of the eyes are looking at the entrance of Sogamoso, and it's almost 2015, we're talking about Sogamoso and the projects that are going to enter, what would be a panorama of prices of energy that you guys would be looking at, for example? My name is Joanna Castro from the network Vial, the Red Vial. Well, energy prices, we run some models that depend on many conditions. The entrance of Sogamoso is given because the system required it. We don't think that the prices are just going to go down simply because Sogamoso is going to come into effect. We know that the government is going to regulate prices. We know the government wants the prices to stay stable. The same with Kimbo, demand required it, but everything depends on what the rest of the supply and demand is like, and how the rest of the hydrology in the country is going to continue. It's very difficult to forecast the prices. Sogamoso needed to come into effect, so we don't think that the prices are going to drop drastically. So really, a lot of things are going to take into effect, the climate factors and demand and all the other hydrology plants as well in different companies. But so we don't think that Sogamoso is going to make prices drop substantially. I have another question that's a bit different than the last. This has to do with the stability of the system. We see that there are many projects that are being planned and that hopefully will start in the next couple of years. But all those projects are basically hydrology based. Is that not a bit of a threat for the system? I haven't really listened to a lot of thermic projects. I'm not sure if you are analyzing thermic projects. And is that taking you? Will that threaten the stabilization of the system? Well, we have had carbon plants into our plants as well. For the first trimester of 2014, we have a 150 megabyte plant that's coming in, that's carbon based. And in 2015, another two are going to come into effect. The thing is that we have to calculate the firm energy that the hydrology plants are going to be able to produce, and we suppose that hydrology plants are going to be there. So expansion has been working that way, and it's worked so far. So that's why we've been doing it. What about gas? Oh, gas has stopped because the rules were not really clear. So perhaps in the future, if we might go back to gas. If you find what? Well, some new more stable something that's more competitive with water, because we have a lot of hydrology, a lot of sources of water that favor us to expand hydrology wise. But we're trying to analyze how good it would be to depend on only one source. But for the moment, everything has worked so far, so we're going to continue with hydrology since it's a firm energy producer. Well, here is something very interesting as well. The topic of the climate change is very extreme. It doesn't mean that our waterways are going to be completely dry, but in the dry seasons, they're going to go to low levels and minimum levels, and in rainy seasons, they're going to increase, and we're going to have more rain than actually is expected. So not only the energy sector, but companies like farming company and housing sector as well, and transportation sector, what they have to start is adjusting their activities based on that type of and that new dynamics of the environment. Take advantage of the rainy seasons, better the regulations, to keep into mind the extremes, and understand that we're going to have extremes, and plan for the long term and in the short term and in the medium term as well for those changes. What could possibly happen if we had less water, but taking advantage of the big rainy season as well. So let's take advantage of the rainy season, thinking about the dry seasons as well. Right now we're having, like for example, we're passing from the winter to the summer. Obviously, there's no seasons in Colombia. We don't have any spring, so we're jumping directly from winter to summer, or from summer to winter, because we don't have fall and spring. That's one of the complexities of a tropical country such as Colombia. So not only are we reducing waterway currents and the dry seasons, but during the rainy seasons, these currents are going to be even higher. So that's another key that's fundamental. Yes, Carlos Mario? Sorry, Carlos Mario, I would like to interrupt and to complement a bit the question. Could you tell me your name again? Jaime. The question you said Jaime, you asked Jaime. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go away from the presentation of hydrology for a second. I'm going to go into the topic of the technical side of things a bit. On the technical side, there's worries, of course, because of the proliferation or the great amount of hydroelectric plants. But looking at that, the regulatory bodies, and in this case in particular CNO and the different committees and subcommittees that are being that are ascribed to the CNO, which Isagen has an active participation in. Specifically, the National Group of Control has looked at two different particular topics that answer the question that you're making, Jaime, regarding stability of the system. Really, thermic topics will give us some stability of the system. However, when we cannot take it, we can't really lessen the hydrology resource we have. But we have two different things. The generation of modulation, which is regulated by the council and has forced all companies, such as including Isagen, which they made their pilot program. The final objective that we wanted here was to have a model that allows us to predict what the behavior, the electrical behavior of the system would be like, and to adjust all of our electrical components of the plant so that they can contribute in a positive manner. And the second has to do with the problem that exists in the systems where there's a great deal of hydrology resources, where we're talking about low hydrology, where normally sometimes they mitigate this. But what we have done is a big technical job that's very important, and we presented internationally, where we've hoped to find different parameters, operational parameters for all of our plants, with the hope that they contribute with balancing this. Ricardo was talking about the hydrology area. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the technical side, and I wanted to give you a bit of tranquility that we are looking at all these factors and balancing this. Something other that's also important is logically that climate change forces us to try to diversify and not only have hydrology. That's why Isagen in their plan and their growth plan has included plans such as geothermal plants that does not depend on climate, but depends on the cooling and removing vapor from the center of the Earth. Here we have energy for the next 5 billion years, for example. That's a plant that can work and every single season and has no effect. The climate really won't affect it. That would really be something good to strengthen the system. Another thing is that we have named a wind energy park that could have 30 to 32 megabytes. That's our first bet on wind energy. But really, we have a large capacity of wind energy that and the feasibility studies that could possibly be developed at the moment where it's required. And they're working really hard in investigation. For example, the geothermal topic, you guys continue to explore, you continue to investigate. We have 2 zones, for example, in feasibility studies, and the volcano of the Riz, and a pre-feasibility study in the south of and the binational project. Oh, good morning. Thanks for the presentation, Fernando Rueda from Scandia. I have 2 questions regarding Venezuela, for example. The topic is, what about prepaid sales that you're making to Venezuela? What are your perspectives? Are you going to continue? Are they going to grow? And the second topic has to do with gas with Venezuela as well also. And now here's the reversion of the agreement. We haven't really touched the topic of Venezuela. I don't know if they have any restrictions of using or price restrictions. Let's say, what is associated with the topic of Venezuela here? On the topic of energy, we continue to export energy, and they continue to prepay for the energy. Venezuela prepays for the energy, the one that they consume. They ask for a certain amount of energy, depending on the conditions that Colombia has, depending on export transportation lines. And the last month they reduced a bit of their demand, so we don't really know exactly how much they're going to consume. And regarding gas, what the market knows, and Ecopetrol, which is the one that has administered that contract, is that gas has to revert by July of 2014 by 150 square meters. That's the information that the companies in the sector have, and the expectations are that we will be able to dispose of this gas. That will have a lot of political aspects that is really foreign to us as a company. Another question from the public. I think we only have 2 questions that have not asked from the public. So let's ask those 2 people. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to force anybody. Yes or no or yes? Okay. Well, David Santos from Copas. I would like to understand or project or to understand towards the future, how could one think that the debt structure for Isagen going to evolve? Because Sogamoso, for example, they had a lot of financing leverage. And yes, before the expectations that interest rates will go up, that is relevant. Well, very good question. But that one, that's my position, something I have to answer. Sogamoso is going to have a very important impact on the cash flow of the company. After 2015, we're going to have over $1 billion in EBITDA, and that's going to make our debt levels are going to go down quickly. We will hopefully end by next year with a debt on EBITDA around 4.5 times. And after the end of 2015, perfectly we can bring that down one or 2 times. Perhaps that in a few years the company will be able to self-finance itself, and we will be able to face new challenges as well. Regarding the topic of debt, we have taken advantage of the local low interest rates that have happened, and then we have been able to refinance Club Dilo, which are the interest rates we have with 10 different banks. It was DTF plus 4.9%. We were able to negotiate to IVR plus 4.30. That's less than 50 percentile points less, which is pretty good. And we extended our payments to 12 years, which gives us better cash flow. And we're signing that here hopefully by December. We had a grace period of 3 more years after we signed this, which that alleviated our cash flow for right now. So we had a 3-year grace period. And additional to this, we modified what we were able to have greater long-term things, and also in leasing, it's not going to be so different. But what I'm trying to tell you is that we're actually lessening a lot of the interest rates that we had in the initial financing for Sogamoso. We're going to see what options the new market is going to give us to better our cash flow and better our interest rates, so we can lessen our debt and to find and try to find lower interest rates if we can. I believe that now there's a question, one last question from Natalia Gudelo. She says, Natalia from Valores Bank Colombia online again, she sends another question. She says, what is the reading that you are giving that there are delays to the Sogamoso project regarding the date that you guys had hoped to because of delays in environmental requirements, etc. She's asking. And will that force agents that have projects that are being built in these particular moments and that also has delays because of environmental licenses, can they blame these delays on the AMLA, which will allow them to postpone their delivery dates? Is the question clear? Well, I'm going to answer a piece of that question, and then perhaps Javier can answer the second part of that question, so he can assimilate the question and have more time to think. Should we read it again? Well, you can read the second part, but first let me answer the first part. When Isagen in 2008 started the Sogamoso project, they expected to have it in operation, or the commitment with the market was to start in December, the 1st of December in 2014. We have always been very ambitious, and we had set the goal to get in a year earlier, but we had originally set it for December 2014, so we're not really that delayed. And that date, we told the market that. Nevertheless, difficulties that appeared and if you guys know about, have not allowed us to deliver that year early, which we wanted. So today we were saying we were going to enter 3 months early, which is still something pretty decent. I still believe that it's a decent interest date because our initial deadline was actually December 2014. But since we told you guys that we were going to have this effort 2013, so you guys look at it from a different perspective, you think it's a delay, but really we're actually getting in 3 months earlier than we had forecasted. Regarding the second part of this question, I believe that Javier already has the answer. Yes, it's important to know a bit about what the sequence of the environmental studies are like. There's a decree that's clear that establishes, it's Decree 2820, which establishes the steps. But generally, we start with a diagnosis of the environment of alternatives, where the person that's going to make the project will propose different alternatives that he can have for the project, and he has different proposals and compares the different alternatives and their environmental impacts, and then the authority decides on one of those alternatives. We are in pre-feasibility phase. When we pass the feasibility and design phase, we do the study of environmental impact, and the authority itself will give you an environmental license. The greatest delay happens in obtaining the environmental license itself. After you have the environmental license in Colombia by norms comes included, then the permissions come with it. So the permissions of emissions, permissions of occupations, etc., and all the rest of them. So when you obtain the license, you start the project immediately, and you can't start doing it before having a license, of course. Sorry, Javier, she asks if that's the reason why many projects have been delayed because of their license. And many projects are taking advantage of and blaming the ADAM for these delays. And they're using this to extend their delivery dates. Does that really happen? Well, there's something important here. in the auction phase, there are some requirements to enter the auction regarding environmental licenses. I can't enter the auction without having any environmental licenses. I have to have some workings, or at least submitted, either having a license or a diagnosis that has been approved. You have to, when you enter the auction, you must have a project and an environmental factor that allows you to participate in that auction. And once you enter the auction, so really the delay in the project that could be attributable to the ANLA is in the process of obtaining the licenses, the environmental license, or approving the diagnosis of alternatives themselves. So when the project is in the construction phase, it can take, it can be delayed because if you include something that's not included in the actual license, and there's a cause which was not, or if there's a contravention, or is there something different than the license, then the project can be stopped because of the environmental authorities. That's not the case of, or the communities could actually stop the project because they close the ways, or they have strikes, or because there's conflict. There has been projects where they have had licenses, and they started constructing where strikes have paused them. So in the case of Sogamoso, we gave them an early date. We fastened our seat belts, our schedule. We tried to, and there has been some external events from climate-wise and construction, which has forced us to extend that year early, but it is within the forecasted scheduled dates. But it has not been due because that has not the fault of the AMNA. I'm talking about after they have issued the license. I'm not sure if you have clear. Well, yes, us agents also have risk. We run risk when we go into auctions, and some of them have environmental things a little bit further than others. Isagen already had their environmental factors already very further advanced. But there's a commitment with the market. So what happens with agents? When we want to enter a specific date, we have a year that we can play with, covering with other agents, and then if we don't enter within that year, then there's some guarantees that we have to pay, and there's some guarantees that have to be met, and there have to be reconfiguration in order to fill that offer. There are some penalties, and financial penalties and commercial penalties by not meeting the due dates. That would be like another instance, for example, is the commission has some fixed norms. And now with the license, you don't need different operations to operate, right? Well, it should. In order to start operations, it has to have met all of the obligations under the license. Yes, the plan of management. Yes, and it must have everything fulfilled in order to operate. And in any specific moment, there can be a visit by the authorities, and they can stop if you violate any of these norms. But we can't really blame the authorities because it's activity's fault. But there are some conflicts with community, which can't really be the fault of the agency or the company. But basing ourselves on other cases that we don't really know about, we can't really say why something happened, because these are particular cases. We have to go into detail what happened in that project and why did that specific project stop. We don't really know. Thank you very much. Dr. Vasquez. Well, I want to thank Dr. Rico and Isagen for the opportunity again of being able to share today with you with such an important event. I believe that I had not seen, for a long time, I hadn't seen such a technical job and such a specialized job, having brought to you such great information in order to better transparency of information and to strengthen trust in the market. And you, the analyst, I know what you're looking for is to solve your questions, answer your questions. That sometimes we came with some questions, and I know you came in with some questions, you leave with even more, but, well, I believe that we're going to have to repeat this process again, Dr. Vasquez, because, as I told you before, there are some markets that do this more periodically. I believe that energy markets need this a bit, as they're doing this day by day. They're solving the questions day by day. As we saw in the gas market, the prices, why are prices as they are? What are the factors that are affecting pricing? We looked at the climate. How does it influence directly, not only in dry season, but in extreme seasons as well? We saw all the climate models that you guys showed us that the country is using and that we're going to continue to use. And I believe the challenge is to continue to take advantage of what Isagen has to offer and has been implementing for a while, as has been the plans of managing environmental wise, and the managing communities as well, and the social factors. And the strategy of growth, of course, as you saw, is based directly on the analysis and decisions of designing strategies that are hopefully trying to reduce those threats and risks, and from the different perspectives and different fields, and from the environmental side of things, which, as you saw, there's a lot of questions that are related to the impact of the environment with the management, not only of the influence area of the hydrology sector, but the indirect influences as well, such as how they manage the Epuqueme Lagoon. Up to what point will the company will be able to help with their knowledge in order to recover and restore the different waterways, not only affected by climate changes, but also because of the problems with the mountains and degradations and the different ecosystems that are having because of other different types of activities that are different from generating energy from hydroelectric plants. So I believe here's going to close this topic with these reflections from the top. I'm very proud of the technical team and this work that has happened today. Thank you very much, Ricardo. Yes, the first is to give you all great big thanks for having come here today and for continuing to come to our events and participating actively. The questions you have asked have been very enriching and have allowed our technical team to learn about many new things that will help us to prepare ourselves to answer more questions. You guys are the most important channel that we have in order to communicate ourselves with the owners of the companies. And many of you are owners of the company yourselves, so for us, you're very important. Thank you very much for having got here. And the Isagen team, thank you very much. I'm very satisfied because of the work that you have done, and thank you because of all the effort and having accompanied us today. And all the organizers, thank you very much. I believe that the event was a great success. It was very prepared, without having any inconveniences. And the final reflections which I leave is that Isagen is a company that really has risk management that's very strong. We have an identification process which is what are the possible events that can affect the different strategies of the company, and we can establish systems and parameters, methodologies, and controls in general which will allow us to mitigate these risks. Any topic which is identified, clearly we need to go into depth in the topic of hydrology. It's a topic which is a situation we saw last year. You'll remember how it was last year in September. It was the month where we had the lowest water levels in the last 40 years in the Miel plant, and we went a little bit more into depth in these forecasts so that the commercial operations were able to use this information in a better fashion. So I hope to have given you, or I hope we had given you some valuable information for your analysis. I invite you to continue to use our information channels through Berta and Ana Maria, which are investor relations people, or you can contact me directly, ask me, make suggestions regarding this event. What would you have liked more? What did you like especially? This will help us improve and the next events that we have, so we can take these events into thank you very much again, and I say goodbye to all. Thank you very much, Ricardo. Oh, sorry, Ricardo. It's also important to highlight Ricardo's support here and the way you were able to manage this panel so effectively.